Hello, welcome again to this channel. Today, we're just going to be talking about something awesome, the word redemption, what it means for us, and why the Bible is so emphatic on saying that we are redeemed, and why it seems to speak of it as something that's a done deal. We really need to understand these words and how they apply to us, and how, therefore, we can live knowing fully what has been achieved when Jesus Christ redeemed us. Key scripture today is Ephesians chapter 1, verse 7, which says, "In him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of our trespasses, according to the riches of his grace." So we see here that redemption seems to be a transitional word, meaning that it marks movement from one state to another. Redemption, therefore, is a removal of something from one state to another, or a buying back of something from one place to another. We can define redemption, or the word redeem, as to buy back, or to get or win back, to free from what distresses or harms, such as to free from captivity, and to help overcome something. So you free from captivity by payment of that ransom. That is usually what to redeem is. Or you can be to release from blame or debt. It can also be defined as to change for the better, to reform, repair, or restore. Redeem can be to free from a lien by payment of an amount secured thereby. Also, you can define to redeem as to exchange for something of value. Redeeming, for example, trading stamps, you are taking the stamps in for something that's valuable to you or of your need in that moment. It is also to make good, which means to fulfill or to atone for. For example, you can redeem an error. You can also offset the bad effect of. That's another way to define redeem, to make worthwhile, retrieve something. So we can see that redemption can be defined as taking one from bondage to freedom, from guilt to forgiveness, from separation to reconciliation, or from death to life. So in this sense, redemption is not merely a label of salvation or a salvation's result. It is the bridge between the problem and the resolution. So it answers to the question, how does humanity move from brokenness to restored relationship with God? This is the purpose of redemption. So redemption names the means of transition. It shows us how that is accomplished. In other words, redemption is a process. So it's not just a moment. There is a transaction that happens there. So biblically speaking, redemption functions as a process with a beginning, a decisive act, and an intended end. So we'll check out these three. What is the starting point? We'll point this starting point will determine A. So point A, starting point, a human being is in bondage and in loss. So let us look at this and say redemption begins with a condition, and this condition requires release. So humanity is described as being enslaved to sin, according to John 8, verse 34, being under the power of death. Romans 6, verse 23, being separated from God. Isaiah 59, verse 2. And we see in scripture that redemption always presupposes something valuable that has been lost and cannot free itself. So you do not redeem what is already free. You want to notice that there is nothing in terms of all the definitions that we have given to this word that was in the same state before it was redeemed. So redemption speaks to something that is not free, something that is already under bondage of some sort, or tied down to something, or having been kidnapped. We talked about ransom, paying ransom. So redemption is for those that are bound. And moving on to point B, therefore, the redemptive act, the action that redeems. So Jesus' death, we see here, is the point of the redemptive act, that which causes or brings about the validity of the process. So the center of the process is Jesus' death, which scripture presents as a ransom and a purchase. So the Son of Man came to give his life as a ransom for many. He himself proclaimed this in Mark 10:45. 1 Corinthians 6 verse 20 says, you were bought at a price. So here we see redemption is, number one, costly, which means it requires a life, because the wages of sin is death. So which means men deserving of death were redeemed through the death of another. So therefore there's a cost there that needs to be paid. And so in this case, it did cost someone's life. And also redemption is substitutionary. We see this because Jesus stands in the place of others. He comes instead of us. He dies instead of us. So it is also intentional. Redemption is intentional. It's not an accidental suffering, or but it is purposeful self-giving. Someone has to be willing to bring about this process of redemption. And so if someone is paying, it's them doing the deed, being intentional to pay for that. In this case, Jesus was willing to pay with his life in exchange for mine and yours. Jesus dies not simply to show love, but to effect a transfer. So there was a transfer in effect. His death is not just that he loves you only, but there was a transfer from guilt to forgiveness, from condemnation to justification, from slavery to freedom. And this is the story even from the children of Israel, how they were purchased from slavery. They are already the valuable children of Abraham, to whom the promises belong, but they find themselves in a place of bondage, in a system that was making them slaves. So you see, redemption through the Passover lamb was a sign that this lamb's blood, by his blood, you have been redeemed. All this pointing to what Jesus was coming to do for the whole world. This is the importance of the children of Israel, by the way. They were entrusted to keep this picture of the love that God has for the humankind, the men on earth, Adam. So the cross is the decisive turning point in the redemptive transition. It is what guarantees that men can go to the other side, or men can receive that which was purchased, or which they are purchased for, what is paid for. When he is saying it is finished on that cross, he is saying the transaction is complete. The end point, C, is restoration and belonging. So we see here, redemption does not end at forgiveness alone. Its goal is restoration. So redemption's goal is restoration. After having saved, after having redeemed or bought, what you want is to have taken that thing and have it in your possession, isn't it? If you are buying back something, once you have bought it, you must therefore have it in your possession. That's when the transaction is complete. So we see the redeemed those who are redeemed are, number one, reconciled to God. According to 2 Corinthians 5 verse 18 to 19, they have become adopted as children. According to Galatians 4 verse 4 to 5, they are restored to purpose and inheritance. According to Ephesians 1 verse 7 to 11, In other words, redemption aims not merely to cancel debt, but to restore relationship and identity. This is the purpose of redemption. So therefore, the end of redemption is not freedom from something, but freedom for something. Galatians chapter 5, verse 1 says, "For freedom's sake, Christ freed us." So what we want to move to understand about redemption is that the purpose of redemption, when we're saying Jesus redeemed us, is for someone to end up somewhere. Without that, the transaction is not complete. We're still under the deception that we have achieved or attained something that we haven't, because it's not us who attained it. All we do is receiving it. So the purpose of redemption is the fulfillment of the nature, the true nature of man. Like we said, we are to be restored as children of God. If you read in the book of Luke, when it's talking about the genealogy of Jesus Christ, when it comes back to the first man, it says Adam, who is the son of God. Because this is who we are. We proceed forth from God. We are a product of God. And so when we are born again, we are born and restored into sonship. So the purpose of redemption in Jesus' death can be summarized as this. When viewed as a process, his reason for dying can be summarized in this way. He died to move humanity from bondage to belonging at the cost of his own life in order to restore people to God and to their intended purpose. So redemption therefore satisfies justice without abandoning mercy. It frees people without denying moral reality. It also restores relationship without minimizing sin. It is both legal in that a debt is paid. It is also relational in that there is reconciliation, and it's transformational because new life is yours. So in one sentence, we'll say, redemption is the God-initiated process by which humanity is transferred from slavery to sin into restored relationship with God, accomplished through the sacrificial death of Jesus and fulfilled in renewed life and belonging. Today we'll stop and end at this conclusion because we want to take time to go and read the word with a new lens that we have learned today. Take time to find every scripture that talks about redemption in the New Testament. Align it with Old Testament types that foreshadow this redemption. And you'll see that the purpose of redemption is for restoration. And so if you're not seeing restoration in some area in your life, you come back and say, Lord, you say in your word, you have redeemed us. And now, therefore, I am no longer subject to these realities. I am subject to new realities. The realities that Jesus Christ says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And therefore, we will have life in abundance because that's what Christ came to give us. Your prayer is more powerful when you have understanding. Be empowered. Stay blessed. Don't forget to subscribe, to like, share, and comment down below your thoughts, and let's discuss about this reality. God bless you.